G'day and welcome to your weekend. I'm Paul Murray. This is 180, or as we prefer to call it, the Friday night at 9:15 project. And here to actually have an opinion, not just fill time on the television, John Stanley, Prue McSween and Dan G'day.
9:15 project. We're getting punted too.
Yeah. Very fair point. Now, look, let's get to a whole bunch of stuff. The whole point of this show is to talk about what happened both today and through the week. Very keen to know what you think. Join us on the desk, 0409 180 140. Now, without doubt, the most shocking story of the week is this one in South Australia where a judge has turned around and has said that there was a technical rape that took place because there was a couple of people who went home, she passed out, but he proceeded to have sex that he thought they were going to have in the first place. It is extraordinary that there is any such thing as technical rape. You would think that unless somebody is completely awake and completely open to what was going on, that anything but that is rape. John, I know you've been talking about it a lot on the radio.
Well, yeah, I think we've picked out this judge's comment, and I think the reason it was such a discussion, certainly in Sydney, was the Telegraph had a headline which said, "When rape is not rape." But there was nothing in the judge's comment that said it wasn't rape. Everyone agreed it was rape. The man, he pleaded guilty to rape. What a judge has to do when there is a confession and a guilty verdict, he then has to decide what the sentence is. And he was making the point, the judge, that this is at the lower end of the scale. And I think everyone acknowledges that, be it rape, be it assault, there are different degrees. And so you have the scaffs that go away for decades, and you have other cases of rape where the penalty should not be as severe. Now, he used the term technical rape. That's probably offended a lot of people, but he wasn't saying it wasn't rape.
But there is fairly obviously, Prue. I mean, it's a scenario where this is a yes-no case, and I don't know that degrees really matter when, quite obviously, if you're not conscious during it, then that's clearly rape.
Yeah, well, what it really told me was, and reinforced the fact that Australian men are really bad at foreplay. You know, the fact that she fell asleep. No, look, I think that basically you're right.
Wow.
You're right, that, I mean, it is a rape.
Yeah.
Technically, it is a rape.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the girl agreed to go and have sex with him, which I thought was a questionable thing when you've met a bloke in a pub for 5 seconds and go across the road. But she was not with us, and so he shouldn't have pursued it.
But it's that
as simple as that.
But it's just obvious. Think about, you know, the darkest parts of your soul or the blokiest parts of you, and quite obviously that's just no go. I don't know what bit of a bloke goes, no, this is all right.
Well, what pleasure is there to be gained? Maybe I'm naive. What pleasure is to be gained by having sex with someone who is asleep?
Absolutely.
But the issue is that the judge in determining a sentence has to come up with degrees and has to say, well, this is not as bad as, for instance, if the girl had said, after the foreplay, no, I don't want to go on with this. And he'd said, well, no, I think that, you know, I'm going to proceed. And she then said, no. He would argue that that is worse than continuing when she's passed out and when she's not in a position to continue to give consent.
You have to. I agree with the judge. I think he's spot on in this case. I think that it really is a technical rape. Because while the law says that it is a rape, I do believe by degrees, and I actually also have sympathy for the man who could be classified as a rapist for the rest of his life.
True, he had sex with a woman who was asleep. It's rape.
A lot of
that's right. No one's disputing that it's rape.
But you can't say you feel sorry for the gentleman, Prue. He knowingly had sex.
I don't feel sorry for him, but I would think it would be a shame for him to be tainted as a rapist for the rest of his life.
He had sex with a woman who's asleep. It's rape, Prue.
A lot of men do, believe it or not.
Yeah, but the point is, he's acknowledged that he's a rapist because he's pleaded guilty to rape. The argument is, do you acknowledge that there were worse kinds of rape than this one?
Of course, John. Of course, but the judge said, he should be allowed to go and visit other countries and he shouldn't have this against him. He had sex with a woman who was asleep. It should count against him a little.
Yeah, but at the same time,
he should be something other than inconvenient.
But if you're walking through the park and there's a woman asleep and you decide you're going to have sex with her, that you've never met her, that's worse.
She consented initially.
Absolutely, but isn't that the difference between sending somebody away for 5 and the rest of their life?
That's right.
So then why do you have to turn around and use terms like technical rape? Which is, I mean, this is the thing. These are eminent, smart people who understand the value of language.
Well, what those eminent, smart people do is they're giving judgments in a courtroom and they're not actually actually worrying about tabloid newspapers picking out one line and turning it into headlines that say when rape isn't rape, because it was not an argument that it wasn't rape.
But you certainly would have thought that South Australian judges in particular, who I know have had this done to them before.
Because there was the famous case where it was said when no doesn't necessarily mean no, and that was an outrageous statement, which was wrong.
Yeah.
But let's hope a lot of women learn from this as well. You know, girls in pubs tonight are not going to consider going across the road with some bloke.
Yeah, but also equally men would know that if someone passes out, you haven't got the right to continue.
There's no carte blanche. Absolutely. Look, very keen to know what you think about it, both this case and the issue in general. 0409 180 140. One without notice, guys, again in the courts. Today, a mother has been sentenced to a whole bunch of hours of community service. This is the woman who was egging her kid on to be involved in a fight. This was on a current affair that they first showed. The judges turned around and said, look, basically, you're a bad mum for egging your kid on in the middle of a fist fight. It does seem extraordinary, though, that somebody who is on tape egging on the beating up of another person walks away with less time in terms of community service than somebody who probably gets involved in graffiti or maybe drink driving, which I would think it's an equally violent crime.
I agree with you. I think she should have been in the slammer for a while. I think, you know, I saw that footage and I heard the woman and it was absolutely appalling, and I think she forfeits the right to be a mother for quite a long time. But she should be in the slammer.
But you're not punishing the kid. Sorry, Paul. You're not punishing the kid if you send the mum away to the slammer. All of a sudden, the kid's deprived of mum.
The kid is being influenced quite strongly by the mother and saying, "Go after her, Tegan," or whatever her name was.
But the thing that I don't understand about these cases, and so many other ones, including just the basic ones of assault, that when we always hear about glassings and all the rest of it, that surely there's got to be the midpoint between 20 years in jail and virtually nothing in terms of community service. Isn't that what weekend detention is for? The idea of saying, you know what, for the next 2 months, your weekends are going to be spent in any one of the low security jails, so you get the message. You know what? You did stuff up.
Yeah, but you're looking at it in terms of what penalty we, the outsiders, can look at and feel satisfied that the person's been punished, when people who are within the justice system will say the more appropriate thing to do, particularly with young people, is to find something that's going to actually stop them doing it again. And maybe that involves some sort of community service. You'd like to think that this woman is going to be given some sort of, I don't know, counselling, whatever it is. It sounds like a very lame word, but something that's going to make her realise that this is a stupid thing to do. She's not being a good mother, and this example she's setting is going to mean her daughter will grow up the same way.
See, I think generally, and I'm not a massive fan of Monday, morning quarterbacking too much about judges. However, on the issue of assault, I always just think that assault is not considered a serious enough crime because it happens so damn frequently, and people egging people onto assault is just sort of considered this sort of fairly minor crime. Like, actually injuring another human being or encouraging it has got to be as significant as stealing money from someone.
But do we know the details of this case, i.e. the mum that egged the kid on? Was that kid bullied by the other kid?
Well, I don't even know what prompted the fight. I mean, this is all what gets lost whenever these stories
See, and that's the
come
context
out,
we need to know, because if the other kid was, had belted the original kid, well, maybe there's some context, when the mum could say, well, the kid's got to learn self-defence. As part of the growing up process. We need to know more about this particular case.
But at the same time, I mean, this woman really, we'd hear about docs stepping in. This woman, I don't care whether the kid was bullied or not, you don't encourage your daughter to go and beat the hell out of another girl. I mean, it was very ugly.
Let me toss this one in, though. After the very ugly scenes at the end of State of Origin 3, where there was fist fights and there were people, the guy was knocked out, how many times did we hear people say, "Oh, that was fantastic. Oh, that was really good"? How many times did we hear people validating it? We saw on the footy show, one of the real role models, Nathan Hindmarsh, he's one of the most respected players in rugby league, he was saying, "Oh, I thought it was good."
Yeah, but look,
that was very bad.
But I think there's context to that. Look, I mean, it's not the greatest example for kids, but it's different than a mum telling a daughter in the middle of a park, settle a score that way, if at the end of all of the passion that was there that it got a bit out of control, and look, we sat on this very panel and had a go at the bloke that knocked another guy out. but there seemed to be a bit more context than this. But look, I'm very keen to know what you think about this. You can always send us an email, 180@skynews.com.au. Now, a massive thanks to John Stanley, who found this story today. But the Sun newspaper is reporting that the father of Jamie Neal is now fighting with Jamie Neal. For those of you that don't remember, just a week ago, Jamie Neal is, of course, the English backpacker that went missing. Apparently, the deal was that he was going to give £50,000 to his dad and keep £50,000 for himself. Jamie, who of course is the one who did go missing for 12 days, has decided not to pay his father. Now Dad's rather annoyed, Prue.
Yes, well, it's interesting because Jamie wasn't there when during the whole exercise, and the father, of course, really went through it, and I can understand why he was so, benevolent towards them all. But there's a lot more to this story. I think the family's been estranged, and maybe in the cold light of day when someone's waving 50,000 quid in front of you. It's sad that it's happened. I don't think the father necessarily deserved any of the moolah. I mean, it was strange that he thought he did have a right to it. Let's hope Jamie does see it within his conscience to give them something, for goodness sake.
Well, I toss this in, though. 60 Minutes, if you saw the 60 Minutes story, Jamie, as television talent, was appalling. He was dreadful. He could, he was really dull.
It was very similar to...
John, it's not his fault he was up against MasterChef. Come on.
I know, but I'm saying, but I had a look at it, and he was pretty dull, and the dad saved it. They had so much of the dad in there, because he was the articulate one telling the story. So the dad's probably thinking, well, I saved your interview.
Yeah, that's
give me a
come on.
But did you have that sense when you saw the Jamie Neal interview, that very famous episode in Frontline, where there's the Desert Angel and there's the battle between the two current affairs shows, and then eventually she has a stutter, and then Mike Moore is looking at the camera.
Right.
I had that sense when I was going, $200,000, and if you look at the ratings, they virtually got $1 for each and every viewer.
Well, what about the dad? Isn't he a piece of work? Wasn't he about to leave the country?
Yes.
But he was about to leave his son high and dry in the Blue Mountains,
No, he wasn't.
and then he got a call, oh, you better come, we found your son. He was
for
gone.
12 years, of course. 12 days, I mean, for goodness sake.
So
You've been
firstly,
looking for him.
and then he comes back to find his son. That's great. Make sure he's front and centre in all the photos. The poor kid's got a tube up his nose, and here's the dad, making sure he's front and centre. And now he wants to.
People want to have the photo. The story was the father's anguish and the kid.
He's an opportunist. He doesn't deserve a cent.
So there's a question. You're saying no money. Does Dad deserve a cent?
I don't think the dad needs the money. I think it should go to the people, the rescuers, and the kid should get something.
But the interesting part of this is it's £50,000 according to the London Sun. It was originally meant to be $200,000. Peter Ford told me this afternoon he reckons it's closer to 30 or 40, even lower than that. Well, it wasn't worth that much. You just wonder whether the manager here, the fellow involved in brokering the deal, he's put it out that it's 200 because he wants to up the ante of what these things are worth. And 60 Minutes isn't going to come out and say, listen, we actually paid less for that because they want to make out that they've got big checkbooks.
I don't understand why, and this manager's a very good operator, Sean Anderson, why he wouldn't have sold the story to an English television station, because it would have made so much more money, because they are very sceptical over there about the story. It would have been even bigger news than it was here.
Well, this is the whole thing, is that the reason that Channel 9 had to put it on Sunday night and not hold it till the day after MasterChef was because they had in fact done the English media deals as well. Right. So basically all on the one day the story was going out in both Australia and in England, because quite obviously if you were Channel 9, there's no way you would have spent money on an interview that no one was going to watch because they were watching MasterChef.
Why didn't they stick an apron on him and get him to wick up with something? Well, it would have done well.
Not a bad idea.
They had to hop in early because he was such bad talent, and they knew that once people heard him talking, they weren't going to get it.
They should have had Jamie pop in on the MasterChef set and eat the final meals. The bloke hadn't had a decent meal in 2 weeks.
Exactly. What do you think? 0409 180 140. In a moment's time, looking forward to discussing the rest of the week, but let's have a look at some of the photos of the week, some of the images that help tell the tale of the past 7 days. Let's have a look here. There is a new effort in Afghanistan as we speak. The Americans going even harder than they have in the past few months. Also worth having a look at here, of course, there was the lunar eclipse, which sent much of Southeast Asia crazy. I love that there were, no matter where you were in that part of the world, there was all sorts of things from welding masks through to 3D glasses being worn. There's a whole bunch of other ones here. Everyone loves an arty shot. And in the end, this is the shot that we will not see for another 100 years. Something that we will see at least 6 times in the next 12 months is beauty pageants. This is Australia's entrance in Miss World Australia. I don't care for these things, but I just enjoy the stupid photos that come from them. This is 180 on Sky News. Keep in touch, 0409 180 140.